is Harman Red. It is the perfect film for photographers who have a flair for the dramatic and the spooky. You can get some top-tier spooky photos on this film, let me tell you. This is a 35mm Redscale film that renders scenes in dramatic tones of oranges, yellows, and reds. It was released on Valentine's Day earlier this year, and since then I have had the opportunity to shoot 2 rolls of it. One in studio and the other during my trip to New Orleans. And I don't want to brag or anything, but I picked the 2 best places to shoot this film. I have some great example photos to show you throughout today's video. I'm going to show you the raw scans as well as my tweaked and edited versions side by side so that you can compare results. For those of you who care about scanners and settings and things, I DSLR scan all of my negatives using my Nikon D850, and I manually convert the negatives in Photoshop by hand, lovingly. Today, I'm gonna go over the specs of the film, what it is, what it costs, etc. And then I'll talk about my experience shooting with it. What I tried, what I learned, what worked, what didn't, etc. Finally, I'll talk a bit about Harman. What are they up to, and how does this film fit into their roadmap for the future of film photography? Before I jump in, you may have noticed that I sound strange. Now that may be for one of 2 reasons. The first reason is that I am trying out a new microphone. So I'm currently double mic'd, but I would really like this to be the main mic. I get a lot of complaints about the sound quality in my videos, and I'm hoping that using a fancier microphone will fix that for people. I don't know anything about sound quality, so I hope it sounds better. The other reason is that I'm very sick. I'm not like very sick. I'm like that point of sick where I've been sick for like 5 days, and I'm really over it. Like I am emotionally done being sick, but my body is not. My voice still sounds a little strange, so I apologize for that if you find my squawky sick voice annoying. Move on. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me. With all of that said, and without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about specs. This is a 35mm roll with a box speed of 125. Each roll has 36 exposures and should be processed in C41. It retails for around $14 USD or closer to $20 Canadian. So kind of on par cost-wise with Harman Phoenix. This is a Redscale film, which means that it is essentially a regular color film that has been loaded in upside down. So when you take a picture, light hits the back of the film first. So you're taking the picture through the plastic base, which is kind of like taking a picture through tinted sunglasses, but then the light is also hitting the red sensitive layer first. Because, okay, color film has 3 light sensitive layers, right? It's got blue, green, and red. All of these layers are sensitive to blue light. So the blue layer is usually on top, followed by a filter. The blue light usually gets filtered out or captured before it hits the other layers. But when you load the film in backwards, that blue light gets captured by the red sensitive layer first, which actually has cyan dye couplers. Like it's not red on the negatives. The negatives look super blue. And then when you reverse them, they look super red. I didn't consider this at all, and I fully expected my negatives to be blood red. And I was very pleasantly surprised by these. Like, look at them, they look so pretty. They're like blue raspberry flavored negatives. Even the negative scans look pretty cool in some cases. Now, when you underexpose Redscale film, you're only really letting in enough light for it to hit the first layer or so. So your results are going to be almost completely red. When you overexpose it, that allows more light to come in and hit those other underlying green and blue layers. So you can get some pretty different color shifts depending on how you meter this film, if you over, under, or regularly expose it. And we can thank Sue Evans of Cosmo Photo for this little comparison of how the colors come through at different ISO settings. Thanks, Sue Evans. This is very helpful. Now, I think you can shoot just about any film as a Redscale film if you load it upside down into the canister, but most cameras aren't going to let you just plug the roll in upside down. I don't think that's going to work. You actually have to take the film out of the canister and reload it in upside down. And not everyone has the setup to do this. So I think it is kind of fun that you can buy preloaded Redscale film off the shelf. Harman Red is actually only the 2nd Redscale film to be commercially available, taking its place in the Redscale Hall of Fame next to Lomography Redscale, which I have never actually shot. Speaking of Lomo, I have seen people shoot Lomochrome Purple in Redscale, and it is so devious. Like, not relevant to the video, I just wanted you to go and look it up. Anyway, that is just about everything that I had to say about specs. Now, I would like to take some time and talk about my experience shooting with this film. So, first off, I shot both of my rolls at 100 ISO. My rule of thumb is to always shoot Harman Phoenix at 125 ISO, and I figured because this is Redscale and it needs a little bit of extra exposure, 100 would do the trick. And it turns out that that was a good choice. I would recommend that you shoot it at 100. I did have some inspo in mind going into my first roll. You see, a while ago I made this video about developing film in blood. The resulting images were pretty cursed looking. So these are black and white images that I toned red in Photoshop, and I really liked the results. So I was kind of thinking with Harman Red that I would lean into the same spooky, cursed aesthetic. I sculpted my lighting all moody and dramatic with an optical snoot and 3 LED panels, which is not really a ton of light for shooting a 100 ISO film in studio. But that lack of light wound up working in my favor a bit because this film is pure red when underexposed. A bunch of these images are underexposed, but I'm not complaining because they look super, super cool. The results I got were basically monochromatic red with a few little flares of yellow and orange here and there, except for this one pair of images that have more of a fiery orange and bright yellow background, and that's because this was lit with a proper strobe light. I am obsessed, okay? It's giving Nero, watching Rome burn. It's giving Lacrimosa. I can't look at these images without a rising crescendo playing in my head. I see people online being like, I don't understand this film. What would you ever shoot with it? Dude, look at these photos, okay? This is what you shoot with it. I think of this film as being an art supply. I don't want this to be too much of a detour. It is going to be a bit of a detour. Bear with me. There are two types of creative people, okay? There is the type who hated art class because they don't like being told what to create or how to create it. My stupid teacher wants me to create a composition based on positive and negative space. I just want to draw whatever inspires me. Okay, cool. I am the second type of creative, and those are people who like being given parameters and finding creative ways to work within them. How can I infuse this piece with my unique vision while still creating a composition based on positive and negative space like my stupid art teacher wants? So type 1 creatives aren't gonna like this film because it has really heavy parameters built in, and it's gonna give them flashbacks to the authoritarian regime of their high school art class. But type 2 creatives are gonna have a lot of fun with it because there's creative parameters baked into it. It's not like you're just buying film, you're buying a challenge. And for me, it's a lot more rewarding to take great photos on an unorthodox film stock or with an unusual camera than it is to take great photos on high fidelity, high definition Portra 400 or whatever. And I also think that using challenging and unique film stocks makes you a better artist. I know, shots fired. Because it forces you to work with the material, to think outside of the box, to sculpt your perspective around the unique parameters, to anticipate the results and work to achieve them. And a lot of the film stocks that I talk about on this channel are these kind of unique film stocks with challenges built in. I spend a lot of time convincing people not to just shoot Kodak 100% of the time, because if we think of film as art supplies, Kodak is like a paint set, and you can render pretty much anything with a paint set, but at some point it's just more fun and more creative to experiment with lino cut or paper mache or embroidery, all of these other methods of creating that are lower fidelity but possess unique quirks and charms that contribute to the final result. And to me, that is the utility or the value of Harman Red, right? It's a unique art supply, it's got unique challenges, and you gotta think outside the box to make great photos with it, but those great photos hit really hard because they make use of the material. Okay, enough about that. Contrasting my experience in studio with my experience outdoors. The outdoors shots are all either properly exposed or intentionally overexposed, which works out nicely. They're generally a lot more yellow with quite a bit more tonal variety. I think this shot is a quintessential, properly exposed image on Harman Red, and as you can see, it has this super sunny, buttery color. I actually toned that buttery color out of a lot of my creepier images. These shots of houses in the Garden District in New Orleans, I wanted them to be a bit spookier, and black and orange is a classic spooky color palette, so I toned them a bit more orange in post. I even tried to coax a little bit of green out of some of these with limited success, but I really like how the resulting color contrasts with the bright orange of the well-lit areas. This shot is a 3-image multiple exposure, where each shot is underexposed. On the topic of layering exposures, I also took this series featuring neon lights on Bourbon Street. I think I captured them pretty well despite my light meter being firmly against this one. I had to shoot them handheld at 1/30th of a second, so they're not perfect, but I do think it's a vibe. Overall, I think I was successful with this role, again, because I chose to lean into the color palette, and I shot scenes that were appropriately spooky and cursed looking. For each shot, I would imagine how the scene would look if it were bathed in fire. Would fire augment this image? The shots that didn't really work out on both roles were the ones that didn't make sense on fire. Like these bright and airy portraits in the park. Why are these bathed in fire? Who knows? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So a great point to keep in mind while you're shooting this, just ask yourself, would this subject look cooler if it was on fire? And if yes, good choice. Okay, final section here, real quick. What is Harman up to? We have had 2 film releases from Harman in the last 2 years, and admittedly, red is derivative of Phoenix, but it shows that they're moving and shaking, right? According to this article from Petapixel, Harman has received significant capital investment in both operational and research and development, and is therefore able to take the funds made from sales of this new film and reinvest them into the development of new color films. So that's pretty sweet, right? And we've seen a few companies doing that in the last few years. We've got Orwo taking the funds from Wolfen NC 400 and 500 and using them to develop NC 200. We have Lomography taking funds from Color 92 and developing Sunkissed. And now Harman taking funds from Phoenix and Red and developing the next big thing. These companies have all undergone the heroic task of formulating new color film stocks in a digital era, and I'm really happy to see that their efforts are paying off and making it possible to keep innovating. I see Harman Red as a bit of a checkpoint. The hype around Harman Phoenix is maybe dying off a little bit, and so Harman Red creates this new wave of interest to help fund the innovation and motivation that will give us the next brand new color film emulsion, hopefully in the next few years. I think it's a really exciting time for film photography, and I'm going hard on Instagram this week promoting film photography and showing off everything that you can do with film and why it is such a great and unique medium and everyone should try it. And if you're interested in getting started with film, my DMs are always open to give you camera recs or film recs. I just want to see more people shooting film. And I'm really happy that the folks over at Harman feel the same. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel so you can like this video. I'll see you guys soon. And in the meantime, I want you all to stay sharp and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye guys.